welcome to the bi-weekly meeting podcast for the OWASP Generative AI Security Project. If you'd like to stay up to date with our project, please click subscribe. And if you enjoy the content or have any questions, please feel free to comment and share. Now, on to our meeting.
All right, everybody, welcome to the June 4th edition of the OWASP Top 10. No, it's not the OWASP Top 10. It's the OWASP GenAI Security Project meeting. Got to get used to these things. So we've got a number of things to run through, but lots of good stuff going on. Let's see. I don't know, is Scott back? I don't see him on. I think Scott might be traveling back, but
No, he was back yesterday. We had a meeting, so
okay. He may just be buried in things, but I think we had a successful thing at the OWASP Europe thing. If anybody has insights, they can comment on that. But let's just get into it. So, all right. So Sandy and Rock, you guys are up first.
Yep. So, a significant amount of progress this week. Thanks for all of your coaching, Steve. As you'll see off to the right, I incorporated a checklist, a workflow checklist, and going through that exercise really helped me. I knew I had everything that I wanted in the compass, but for someone who was unfamiliar with it, it would be overwhelming. So going through this exercise really helped me understand areas that I could refine, so it was easier to just go get it and be able to use it.
Awesome.
I have a couple of additional slides, and I'll kind of explain the theory behind all of it, which is you really have to understand the threats and impacts to an organization to be able to target what you should be doing for testing and mitigations. I'm going to organize it into external and internal threats. I've added new incidents and impact costs and an FAQ tab. We've had several new people that join our meetings on Thursdays. As we all know, everyone gets busy. It's hard to keep up with everything. But I'm looking forward to hopefully I see Will's on the phone. We had Ragiv, who actually works with Jason at Salesforce. Who joined us. So hopefully we'll get some great insight from those guys as they kind of work through the examples. I was hoping to have it completed actually tomorrow. Not going to happen. I'm going to hopefully do. I'm going to target June 26th. It'll depend on how much work everybody can commit to tomorrow. I am traveling for the next 2 weeks, so my time will be limited. But, again, happy. If we have to slip, I'd rather slip it and deliver something really good. Any questions from anybody?
Hey, Sandy, you mentioned did you say there's a meeting tomorrow as well?
Yes, every Thursday at the same time until we release version 1.
Okay, is it going to be the same link?
Yep,
this one?
same link.
Okay.
No, not as this one. It's in the channel. It's in the Gen A. Do you see the channel posted at the top of the slide? It's pinned at the top of that slide. Or that channel, the meeting invite.
So Sandy, maybe you want to back up for a second because it seems like we got some new people. What is this? And how does this relate to the overall group?
So Compass is a worksheet or a workbook that is taking all of the threats and mitigations and all of everything that we publish about and putting it into a single place that people can start building a strategy around it. So it works for whether you're a CISO, whether you're a red teamer, whatever. If you're a developer, you're able to go to the single worksheet and identify, what your biggest threats and concerns are, and then what your defenses and mitigations, and then coordinate your strategy, testing, and everything around it.
Yeah, so just for context for anybody who's new, and if you're new, welcome. Glad to have you. We have the OWASP GenAI project. That's this meeting, which happens every 2 weeks, and that is the kind of top level everything going on in GenAI. Uh, that originally was the OWASP Top 10 meeting, but we have been publishing so much different stuff that we created this umbrella organization, the Gen AI project, and now we have these different initiatives. So Sandy's initiative is one of them. We also have one on AI red teaming. We have one on agentic AI threats. Many of those have their own Slack channels, their own meetings. And kind of what we're doing at this point is going through some of the report outs from the different sub teams that are actively working on producing stuff. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions on that? Okay. So I think Sandy and Rock, this is still you guys.
Yep. And so this is one of the exercises I did this last week was actually go through and try to find, existing incidents. And I want to point a couple of these out to you. And again, it's going back supporting my theory, like my premise that unless you understand the impact and cost, it's hard to actually create a strategy and get the signal out of the noise. Because if you try to defend against everything or you try to test for everything, the cost is exorbitant and it won't be effective. You'll never roll out a solution or you won't be able to defend your organization. So the Air Canada chatbot is one that if you go to, you know, um, presentation on the threats of AI and using chatbots, this incident comes up. I want to point out that the cost to Air Canada, of course they had court cost, but the actual cost to them was $812. So in this big scheme of things, that's not really a significant cost. But if we go down a little bit, we look at the T-Mobile breach, that's 31.5 million plus. They estimated it's going to, because of regulation and, the fines and everything, it's going to be more than that. Just recently announced there was ServiceAid, which is a provider of agentic artificial intelligence, IT management, and workflow. This was relatively new, but almost 500,000 records were breached, and the cost is expected to be in the millions. Clearview AI, specifically around, they were doing data scraping. So 92 million and their services were banned. Epic Games, they used James Earl's voice, which he actually gave permission for, but they're being taken to court by the Workers Guild for unfair labor practices. So even though, in some ways you would say they had legal right to do what they did, they're still, seeing a court case. And, even though I don't expect that to be successful, there's still, costs with your court case. If you go on to the next slide, I have some additional ones. So the New York City, My City chatbot, I'm sure some of you guys know about this one. It was one of the very first public projects that was released. They spent $600,000. They're still pouring money into it. Everybody's upset about it. It gives actually dangerous, wrong information. So, as you're trying to identify like what are the threats to deploying these solutions, really taking a look at these incidents helps you kind of refine what you should be targeting and being concerned about. Just based on what we've seen in these numbers, be careful. Do you have permission to use the data? How are you using? What's the legal rights around that? What's your API security? Do you have any misconfiguration? The one with the Shanghai police was kind of interesting because it was purposeful disinformation, and it was for a specific tea company, and they actually saw, so a bunch of people went out and posted on social media about all of this, how horrible this tea was and all the problems with it, but they saw a drop in sales of 20%. So, thinking about how these tools are being used to cause harm will help you identify your strategy and build out a plan. this was recent. The White House Chief of Staff, Susie Willis, her voice was cloned. This was a combination of voice cloning and they suspect some malware. But she basically will fight fraud and identity theft for the rest of her life. The last one, a Vietnamese criminal network used AI to circumvent bank biometrics, which really I found compelling about this was they weren't actually robbing the victims, even though they were using their credentials. They were just using it to get around the laws around gambling, but they were doing some money laundering. So, hopefully that helps you understand like why using the compass and kind of using the strategy of understanding the threats and impact costs will help you define your strategy.
And hey, Sandy, can I just throw in there too, put a plug in for Brian's leading a team that's doing an incident response document that's going to be out later this month probably. But the key point here is standard incident response teams don't cover the issues with AI. So we've got specific issues related to AI incident responses. And now, just like Sandy said here, you've got things like it overlaps into privacy and security. So attorneys, reputational people, marketing people might have to get involved. And you get into AI, physical AI, you've even got people like EMTs and hazard people who might have to get involved if there's some incident happens as a result. So 100%, we've got to understand what the incident might be, what the incident response is before we can work out how to prevent these things and prioritize it on a risk basis. But there are other documents coming too, so stay tuned.
I'll
jump
just
in and
point
help. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just point out though, from a person who has done cybersecurity incident response. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so if I sound hoarse, that's why. These are all misinformation, essentially, right? Except for the last one, maybe where there might be some biometric impersonation, these would fall under the guide that we have for preparing and responding to like deepfake and things like that. As a cybersecurity incident response person, which is really what the guide that is being developed is for, we would like if these things like if the first three happened at my company, we wouldn't even be involved, right? Like this would not touch the cybersecurity folks at all. This would be other people's. This would be communications, public relations, legal. These things wouldn't even touch our desk. So I think that's just also significant to realize like a lot of OWASP historically has been sort of aimed at developers and like cybersecurity professionals. But I think, it's important to highlight that a lot of those incidents that are being covered would actually be handled by other departments.
Rachel, but that was, I think, exactly my point. We've discussed this a few times that classic incident response, like I say, the classic OWASP audience can't deal with these things. And I think it's optimistic to think that other parts of the organization are ready to respond to these things in the right way. So there will have to be coordinates, which is part of the reason for the rise in AI governance. And obviously we have separate documents on that and checklists and, what's the overall team who's coordinating the deployment of this stuff and then responding to incidents. And it's definitely not just a technical issue, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I think we definitely want to service both audiences. And I think we want to make sure that let's call it classic security, there are plenty examples of, these AI vulnerabilities causing very classic security breaches, and we want to make sure that the security teams understand those and are able to respond to those. I've also been a big fan since day one of taking a very expansive view of these and bleeding over into non-traditional risk areas. And I think this list is a good mix of both. So I love that.
Yeah. The SoundCloud one was interesting, and just because they the very top one, they changed their terms of service, basically saying that they could capture all of any information that was generated by their users. So the reason I included it was make sure you're going back to all of your third-party engagements, making sure that no one's discreetly changing a terms of service on you that you're not aware of, or someone's signing something thinking it's the same old agreement that they've done in the past.
That's also known as the meta strategy, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly everything that looks like social media is changing their terms of service to allow them to digest you. Much the same way they've been doing with some form of AI since 2015 or so. But I do see we see plenty of enterprise versions of that where we see, name your Fortune 100 software company that suddenly slides something into terms of service that says, hey, unless you go opt out of this, we're going to use your data for training data. So you got to be conscious of that. Let's
You think
see.
how
Sorry?
often do you find? I was looking to see how often do you find biometric vulnerabilities? I'm actually working on something like that for my master's program on a paper. And I was curious to see how many of those incidents you found in the overall AI vulnerabilities. How often you see biometric vulnerabilities essentially. I'm curious
Um,
as if biometrics. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say I wasn't specifically, I was just looking for when I went through all of the incident databases yesterday, I was just looking for cost is typically what I was looking for. So, but yeah, I can show all of those to you. Well, the important part, the hard part about going through the incident databases is I don't include anything specifically from a researcher. I look for actual incidents, something that actually caused financial harm to the organization, and you that takes a little digging.
Understood. Because I was just thinking, I knew there was a point in time where the U.S. government military was putting a lot of uh, faith in biometrics, but with the emergence of AI and as it becomes more powerful, I think biometrics, iris scanning, things like that, fingerprinting won't be as strong as they
Reliable.
like to,
Yeah.
yeah, as reliable as they like. So I'm trying to see because I know how much money they put into it and what they put behind that. So I'm trying to see, okay, is there a reason for them to find a way to kind of circumvent putting all their efforts into biometrics?
Well, I was going to say, so I'll chime in on AICTI updates. This reminded me, there was a really interesting instance. I think it was in Southeast Asia where there were these Trojanized Android apps that would steal people's biometric information to defeat Know Your Customer restrictions for their local banks. So it'd basically be like you download Candy Crush or something like that, and it would like take a picture of your face surreptitiously, record your voice surreptitiously, and then harvest your credentials, then go log into your bank account and steal your money. But that was just a really interesting one that I don't see widely discussed as an example of biometrics. And I know that's like kind of not exactly where you're looking for, but might be worth looking into. Um, so I guess update from the CTI initiative really fast. So the AI incident response guide, as noted earlier, we're getting feedback on the initial draft currently, hopefully having the draft to the core team for review next week. It's about 70 pages now. I really want to thank all the
Wow.
volunteers who worked on this. I feel like it's fairly comprehensive. Some sections probably need a little bit more build out, but I'm really glad that it turned out like it did. And again, many thanks to I think about a dozen or so people who contributed to this. Exploit Generation Project. Rachel, are you up to kind of giving the overview where the status of this? I hope I captured it in those points.
Yeah, I think yeah, I think you did a fantastic job capturing the point. So I think where we kind of decided as a team was, there's been some pretty significant developments in terms of LLMs, chain of thought reasoning, as well as the agentic environment. And we're seeing more and more sort of um, penetration testing and automation, offensive security tools that are kind of in this like agentic place where the LLM is really just responsible for sort of determining which of some of the built-in Kali tools and some of the other like agentic processes to be kicked off ought to be. So that's the direction that the team decided to kind of move forward with is to sort of compare uh, the LLM by itself, using some of the older models and its ability to do successful exploit generation versus having the more advanced reasoning models in an agentic environment. So we talked a little bit about like how we can really test it in a way that allows us to speak to its ability to discover these exploits. Um, not really like exactly 0 day, but trying to understand more of its capabilities in that framework. And what the team came up with, and we've just really had some fantastic people contributing to this. These are like their ideas. But what we came up with is, these LLMs do have a knowledge cutoff date, and Hack the Box uh releases new challenges, releases new intentionally vulnerable machines on a regular basis. So we're currently trying to coordinate how we can, essentially using Hack the Box boxes that are after the knowledge cutoff dates. So the LLM isn't just operating off of some walkthrough that has already been documented. And then testing the sort of like, you just have older models of LLMs that we used in phase one compared to the deeper reasoning models in an agentic environment. So that kind of allows us to speak to the performance uplift that has evolved in LLMs since we did phase one, and be able to make some sort of cyber threat intelligence based statements around what are the like knowledge, capabilities, and resources that would be required. And if we uh, notice or observe during these experimentations that maybe there's certain types of vulnerabilities that are strengths or weaknesses. So that's kind of where we are. Our next meeting, we're going to sort of assign specific tasks and scopes to folks. So we can run, obviously it's kind of bifurcated so we can do a comparison. So we're kind of, we're going to be assigning those out and coming up with some timelines.
That's so cool. Do you guys have a timeline in mind for when you think you might be ready to publish the next version?
I don't think yet. We're, right now we're also like we reached out to Scott uh and asked how do we potentially want to approach Hack the Box as like an OWASP group and say, hey, please give us like 4 licenses for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
You can sponsor us, we can throw your name on it, or if we're just going to use project funding to purchase those licenses for the team. So we're still kind of in that phase. I'm hoping not by the next meeting, but the meeting after that, we'll have a better timeline and scoping.
Cool. I guarantee you when you're ready to publish this, we could get a tremendous amount of actually just media attention on this whole topic of AI agentic enabled hackers is so hot right now. And being able to talk about that objectively and plus show some trajectory from where we were, X months prior to where we are now, that data doesn't exist anymore and people are kind of dying to understand it. So that's really
Yeah,
cool.
I actually found it really interesting because I got curious. I got my OSCP years ago before ChatGPT was really a thing. And I looked up recently, I was like, I was allowed to use Google when I took my exam. So I was curious. They very specifically do not allow you to use AI to pass your OSCP. They consider using AI equivalent to getting help from a third party. And I
Mhm.
mentioned that because I think it's significant that OSCP, who provides these certifications for offensive security red teaming, they consider the uplift you get from AI to be significant enough to ban it because it's not a reflection of your skills. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? I think that's significant and interesting.
Yeah.
Brian, did you want to add?
I just wanted to add two things really quickly. One, which is if anyone on the call has a contact at Hack the Box, please let us know. Second is I think after we finish the incident response guide, we're going to be able to pour a lot more attention and energy into exploit generation. So just in the sense of accelerating that a bit.
Cool. On the incident response guide, same question. Do you guys have a target for publishing that?
That's a great question. So hopefully by the end of the month. So like I said, we have our initial draft done now. It's June 4th. We're going to have some reviewers take an initial look at it just to give us feedback, edit it so that it's more coherent, and then release it to the core team. Like I said, hopefully next week. And then, maybe give the core team a week to review it and then another week to, do any kind of edits feedback, which will put us towards the end of the month.
Okay.
So,
And
just in case you haven't, make sure you're coordinating with Scott. I think there will also be a lot of media interest in that one, so we can make sure that that gets appropriate attention when we're ready to push it out.
yeah, hey Steve, and we were just talking about that just before you got here. So I was on a meeting with Scott yesterday, and we talked about doing a podcast with Aubrey specifically about this is coming soon. Stay tuned, right? And we have enough content, obviously, and we talked to Brian about being involved with that as well. So and anyone else we need, but doing a podcast will be fairly easy to say, hey, this is what it is, where it exists within the. I'm going to start using the GASP acronym, the GASP landscape as well as OWASP. That's the generative AI security project, for anyone who doesn't know. That's maybe coming. So within GASP as well as OWASP, what is incident response? What is an incident? And specifically in there, we've got an appendix, for example, that looks at who are the classic incident responders, who are the AI incident responders, additional roles, and who are physical AI responders, defining some of those things. So there's certainly room to talk about that stuff. So we coordinated with Scott and Aubrey. There should be something coming up, later this month, early next month.
Awesome.
In terms of press. Thanks.
All right. I think that's the slides that we brought for the day. Anybody else have business for the team? Going once, twice, three times. All right. Hey, great progress. I will note, it seems like just from watching the channels, the agentic team is storming ahead on a bunch of deliverables. I assume John and Ron were both busy today, but lots of activity going on there. I also did see, I don't think we have Jason on today, but I did see he's kind of stepped back to get the red teaming group focused on some new deliverables that they had been planning. So we really, all the big major initiatives are still very much in flight. And for things like the red teaming guide and the agentic guide, I continue to see people posting those on LinkedIn like they just discovered them, even though they've been out for months now. So those are clearly getting tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of readers, almost at the level of the core top 10 list, I am sure. So it's great to see all of the really good work going on. One thing I'll just note personally, I think I did a quick demo of the Chat Security Playground open source project I've been working on. I kind of got that to a place where I'm pretty happy with a lot of the core functionality that's there. So now I'm building out kind of a hands-on lab guide for it with the idea that people could use that at a conference or something to run, a hands-on LLM security lab for basics. If anyone is interested in testing that for me or giving me some feedback, just drop me a line, Slack, email, LinkedIn, whatever. I would love people to give that a run. I'll probably have something in the next week or two. And then Scott and I have been talking about maybe using that at some conferences where we've wanted to have hands-on labs, but they're generally so difficult to set up that it kind of deters us. But if we had something that everybody could run from their laptop with no setup, would enable us to do more there. So with that, we will pack it up for the week. Thanks everybody for coming and contributing, and we'll see y'all later. Bye.
Thanks for checking out our bi-weekly meeting podcast. If you'd like to stay up to date on all the latest news for the OWASP Generative AI Security Project, please click subscribe. And of course, we'd appreciate it if you'd share with a friend to grow our community. We'll see you in 2 weeks.